Scattered across the most desolate, windswept stretches of the eastern Sahara lies a sea of glass that should not exist. It is a translucent, pale yellow-green material, smooth as a gemstone, yet sharp enough to draw blood, resting on top of sand that has remained unchanged for millions of years. To create even a single pebble of this glass, the desert floor would have to be heated to a staggering 1600 degrees Celsius, a temperature so extreme that it melts solid rock into liquid in an instant. But here is the problem that has haunted geologists for a century. There are no volcanoes in this part of the Great Sand Sea, and there hasn't been a tectonic event capable of generating that kind of heat for nearly 30 million years. Yet the glass is there, millions of fragments of it, littering the surface like the debris of a forgotten cosmic explosion. When you hold a piece of this Libyan desert glass in your hand, you aren't just holding a pretty rock. You are holding the physical evidence of a moment when the sky itself turned into a furnace and began to melt the earth. But think about this for a second. We didn't even know the true scale of this mystery until 1922, when Howard Carter broke the seal on the tomb of Tutankhamun. Deep within the pharaoh's treasury, nestled in a magnificent pectoral ornament, sat a beautifully carved scarab beetle made of a mysterious yellow-green gemstone. For decades, archaeologists assumed it was chalcedony, or perhaps an exotic form of jade. It wasn't until modern chemical analysis was performed that the truth came out. The centerpiece of the most famous pharaoh's wealth was carved from a piece of this desert glass, found nearly 500 miles away in the middle of a wasteland where no human was supposed to survive. This tells us that the ancients knew about this star glass and treated it with a reverence usually reserved for gold. They traveled hundreds of miles into the most lethal environment on the planet to retrieve fragments of a disaster that happened long before their civilization was even a dream. They saw it as something celestial, something touched by the gods. But as we zoom in on the physics of how this glass was formed, the divine explanation begins to look much more like a terrifying, high-velocity nightmare. To turn common sand into high-purity silica glass, you need more than just heat. You need a specific kind of violent energy. If you look at the glass through a microscope, you find something unsettling. Trapped inside the translucent yellow matrix are tiny bubbles and dark streaks of rare minerals like iridium and osmium. These are elements rarely found in the Earth's crust, but common in asteroids. This suggests that whatever happened in the Sahara wasn't a slow geological process. It was a sudden, overwhelming intrusion from space. But here is where it becomes unsettling for the scientific community. Usually, when a massive object from space hits the Earth with enough force to liquefy 60,000 square kilometers of sand, in the Libyan desert we should see a massive gaping hole in the crust visible from the moon. Yet there is no crater. The desert floor is remarkably flat, undisturbed by the kind of impact that wiped out the dinosaurs. We have the melted rock, we have the extraterrestrial chemicals, but the smoking gun of an impact site is completely missing. This led some researchers to propose a theory that sounds like something out of a science fiction novel, an aerial burst. Imagine an asteroid 3 times the size of a football field screaming through the atmosphere at 30,000 miles per hour. As it hits the thicker air near the surface, the pressure becomes so immense that the asteroid doesn't hit the ground. Instead, it detonates in mid-air. It creates a fireball thousands of times hotter than the surface of the sun, sending a thermal radiation wave downward that is so intense that it literally fries the sand into glass without ever leaving a dent in the earth. But here is the part most people miss when they talk about the glass desert. This wasn't just a local event. A blast of that magnitude would have turned the sky black for months. It would have sent shockwaves around the globe. If humans had been standing anywhere near the Great Sand Sea 29 million years ago, they wouldn't have just seen a flash. They would have been vaporized before they could even blink.
The Sahara was essentially turned into a giant laboratory for a heat event we are only now beginning to replicate in nuclear testing facilities. Here is where the conversation takes a turn into the truly mysterious and, for some, the unbelievable. Because the Libyan desert glass looks so much like the Trinitite found at nuclear test sites in New Mexico, a fringe theory has persisted for years. Could this be evidence of an ancient nuclear war? Those who follow this line of thinking point to ancient texts that describe weapons of light and fire that consumed whole cities. They argue that the absence of a crater is exactly what you would expect from a high-altitude nuclear detonation. While mainstream science firmly dates the glass to nearly 30 million years ago, long before the first human picked up a stone tool, the mystery of how such a pure, consistent material was created remains a point of deep contention. Even the Airburst theory has its holes. Recent simulations suggest that even a massive airburst might not be enough to create the sheer volume of glass found in the Sahara. There's a missing variable in the equation, a piece of the puzzle we haven't quite grasped yet. Think about the silence of that desert today. You can walk for days in the Great Sand Sea and hear nothing but the whistle of the wind against the dunes. But beneath your boots, every few yards is a shard of yellow-green glass that once was liquid, boiling under a sky that was on fire. It's a reminder of how fragile our environment really is. The Sahara wasn't always a desert. At various times in history, it was a lush green savanna. But twice, once 29 million years ago, and again in the eyes of the Egyptian priests, this glass served as a reminder that the heavens can change the world in an instant. The scarab in Tutankhamun's Pectoral is particularly haunting when you consider its symbolism. The scarab represented rebirth and the sun's journey across the sky. The Egyptians chose a material born from a literal falling sun to represent the eternal life of their king. They took the debris of a prehistoric apocalypse and turned it into the ultimate symbol of survival. It makes you wonder if they knew more about the origins of the glass than we give them credit for. Did they find the glass and simply admire its beauty? Or did their oral traditions carry a faint, distorted memory of a day the sky fell? As we continue to study these fragments, the mystery only seems to expand. New research into reedite, a rare mineral within the glass, suggests that the pressures involved were even higher than previously thought. Pressures that usually only occurred deep within the Earth's mantle or during the most violent of cosmic collisions. Every time we think we have the glass desert figured out, a new microscopic detail emerges that defies the current models. It's as if the desert is guarding its secret, offering us just enough evidence to be teased, but never enough to be certain. We are left with a landscape that is both beautiful and terrifying, a place where the ground turned to jewels under the weight of a cosmic hammer. Whether it was an asteroid that blinked out of existence in a flash of light, or something even more exotic that we have yet to name, the Libyan desert glass remains one of the most striking anomalies on our planet. It sits there glinting in the sun, a translucent green ghost of a day when the Earth and the stars collided. But perhaps the most unsettling thought is this: if it happened once, it can happen again. The Great Sand Sea is a massive, open-air graveyard of a celestial event that we are still trying to understand. We look at the scarab of Tutankhamun and see a relic of a dead civilization, but we should probably see it as a warning. We live on a planet that bears the scars of a violent universe, and sometimes those scars are made of the most beautiful glass imaginable. The mystery of the Sahara isn't just about what happened in the past. It's about what is still out there in the blackness of space, waiting for its next encounter with